First-person shooter is a broad term. It can mean everything from a sci-fi adventure like Metroid Prime to a demon-eviscerating romp like Doom. Even narrowing it down to a subcategory like military FPS still puts the linear campaign of Call of Duty, the enormous PvP clashes of Battlefield, and the white-knuckle extractions of Escape from Tarkov under a single umbrella. Delta Force, the latest revival of a now 26-year-old shooter series, is probably best defined as a bit of each of those last two, with a dedicated large-scale PvP mode and a separate extraction shooter mode. It's a free-to-play one-stop shop of just fine, competent all around, but it doesn't distinguish itself in battle with any substantial new ideas.
We have captured an objective. The enemy is attacking objective Bravo.
Points of attack and defend. Two teams face off.
While Delta Force is officially out, whatever that means anymore, only 2 of the 3 main modes are currently available. The third, a single-player campaign, is planned as paid DLC somewhere down the line. Of the 2 that are here now, the Warfare mode is Delta Force's version of the big team combat of Battlefield, where 64 players duke it out for supremacy across one of a handful of sprawling arenas. There's no straight kill-centered deathmatch. Instead, the focus is on objective-based games like King of the Hill variants. The standout among these is Attack and Defend, which has one team capturing strategic points before running out of a finite number of respawns, while the other team defends those areas with limitless lives. It's a subtle rule change that does put a good spin on a mode we've seen a lot of in Battlefield. Initially, the offense has the advantage thanks to favorable terrain and an abundance of vehicles. But things even out as the match progresses, and the defense retreats towards their home base and has quick access to respawned reinforcements. This means each side typically gets to spend some time as both the figurative hammer and the nail. The battles certainly do feel big, which is a good thing. Fast respawns mean both teams are dense with soldiers at all times. Once the bullets and rockets start flying, the chaos and confusion of combat is as exciting as you'd expect for a Battlefield-style game. Each gun you use earns its own XP to unlock component options, as is common on modern military shooters. It's particularly fun when you get behind the controls of a vehicle and start doing this. Aerial vehicles like this are challenging to pilot, but can be powerful in the right hands, rewarding skillful play. Vehicles don't totally dominate the battlefield, however, thanks to the varied operatives you can choose to play as and switch between mid-match. These named characters act as a sort of hybrid between a simple loadout choice and a bespoke hero.
I fight for my comrades, honor, and the thrill of kicking ass.
They create the sort of rocket, paper, scissors balance that Battlefield veterans will know intimately. And it's done pretty well. If you are being overrun by vehicles, it might be a good idea to spawn with a rocket launcher. Or, if the fight is taking place in open spaces, it could be a time to bust out the trusty sniper rifle. Each character has unique abilities that are helpful in battle too, like Luna's detection arrows that can periodically be fired to reveal enemies.
Objective Bravo 1.
But none are so powerful as to outright win a skirmish, let alone a whole match for you. One thing that strikes me as off is how heavily bullet arc and trajectory factor into shooting. I don't mind leading a target, but often the bullets feel like they're flying so slow that I may as well be firing airsoft rounds. Maybe that's more realistic than Call of Duty's more arcadey ballistics model, but feels deeply at odds with the aggressive pace of play that the objective-based attack and defend mode drives. Once you die, you generally need to rush back to the objective, but as you're dashing through open space, you're an easy target, and the finicky shooting also means it's tough to return fire accurately on the move. I found this meant deaths tended to come in bunches while I tried to get back to a good position. It's also a bit strange to have the gunplay be so grounded in simulation at one moment, then have operators activate fantastical abilities like these status effect inflicting drones the next. There's nothing inherently bad about that, it's just a head scratcher.
Their eardrums ruptured!
On the other side of things, the operations mode follows the equally familiar extraction shooter framework. You and up to 2 friends can form a 3-person squad to enter an area, shoot AI bad guys, grab the loot, and scoot back to the extraction zone without catching a bullet. It's a tried and true formula that Delta Force follows to the letter, but the generally high quality of its execution make up for at least some of that lack of imagination. There are 3 levels available at launch, with another unlocking in just a few days, and each is an open sandbox that is dense with objectives to choose from. Maps easily highlight points of interest for things like bounty targets, safes to plunder, and intel to decode. That might seem like a small detail to praise, but in a genre dominated by games like Escape from Tarkov that are designed to be intentionally opaque, Delta Force's choice to make important information accessible is a nice differentiator. I like being able to just drop a waypoint and know what I'm in for when I get there without having to memorize the maps or look them up in a guide. So while we have more information here than in similar games, the suspense is still in effect because you never know who's around or in what numbers, and that means every enemy encounter starts with some fast risk assessment. Should I take this shot? And if I do, who will come running? Making quick decisions with limited information does a good job of keeping the action strategic and interesting. That's particularly true if you see other people, as they are certainly more dangerous than the bots, but could be loot-rich targets worth taking on. I'm also a fan of the enemy variety Delta Force throws at you. I encountered plenty of these run-of-the-mill soldiers, and shot under my share of these riot shields, but it can be intense when you are pinned down by one of these bad boys. And I almost jumped out of my chair when this giant freaking alligator came around the corner as we were breaking into a safe. I literally did not see that coming.
Excellent, operator.
One place where you get perhaps too much information, though, is the loot system. There are all sorts of containers to plunder, but just about any operation starts with the whole squad just running right towards whichever safe on the map is marked with the best loot. That could use some work, because the levels themselves are really cool when you explore them freely. Areas like the dam mix offices with exposed industrial exteriors, and there are often hidden doors to open or secret hidden areas where loot can be stashed. Some areas require specific operators to access, like chain link fence that needs to be cut into by the engineer, which would give you even more reason to think about your team composition if there are a reasonable chance that there's something worth finding on the other side. The time between operations is spent here at the Black Site, which functions as your home base. Here you can upgrade things like your storage space, take on missions, and buy new gear. It's also where you manage the well-built loadout screen, where you can save a few different kits you can take into battle, or rebuild them with just a few clicks. It's a fast and slick way to get back in the action, which helps take the sting out of a failed extraction. I'm also a fan of the ticket system, which you can trade in for entire loadouts, including weapons, armor, ammo, and healing items. There are different quality levels you can cash in to get better armor and weapons with more powerful mods, so even if you have a run of terrible luck and lose all your in-game money, you can still start working your way back up from the bottom with some decent gear. Upgrading other parts of the Black Site takes a mix of increasing levels and salvaging specific components in the field, though the amount of time it takes to get even the early upgrades going can take way too long when you need to have good RNG luck with what you find on top of grinding up to the right level. I'd love to build up a workbench to make my own ammo, but given the commitment, I'm just gonna stick to selling weird vases and junk I find in the field and buying what I need, thanks. Delta Force isn't the best extraction shooter, nor does it do big PvP battles better than games you probably already own. However, doing both of those modes reasonably well in one free-to-play package is pretty noteworthy. The massive, vehicle-filled battles are respectable fun, especially in attack and defend, as long as you can get comfortable with the more realistic shooting mechanics and how they mix with fantastical powers. The operations mode, meanwhile, makes for one of the most formulaic and accessible extraction shooters I've played, though the great levels are wasted on too much direction toward the only worthwhile loot. Still, it's a good option for either way you want to play, and deserves credit for doing a solid, if unspectacular and not especially imaginative job of two very different first-person shooter styles.
For more, check out our reviews of Stalker 2 and Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Zombies. And for everything else, stick with IGN.